Hi, everyone, and welcome back to our podcast. And today we're going to talk about something very interesting that I think a lot of people can relate to. But first of all, welcome to you, Raphael, for taking the time and wanting to be part of the podcast. Welcome here.
Thank you all. It's my pleasure to make part here, to take part with you guys, and to share a little bit of my experience in changing career path.
Absolutely. We're really thrilled to have you here. And of course, we also have our co-founder and CMO, Eduardo. Welcome back. You're starting to get some experience now with the podcast, huh?
Yeah, I'm starting to get used to. Usually backstage editing everything, but now let's see.
Let's see.
I want to be Portuguese with Raphael in the future. Let's see.
All right. So today, like I said, we have a very interesting topic, and before we dive into what essentially that's going to be all about, I think it would be nice, Raphael, if you can share a little bit about your background, your experience, so people get a little bit better sense of what you're doing and what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. So I have graduated as a lawyer back then in a long time ago, 2003. Yeah. And then I started with a friend, a law firm in Rio. Actually, he started that. I was his intern.
Nice.
And then we used to work for banks, major banks in Brazil and some international banks as well. And then when we started off, it was just the two of us. And then I left in 2016, 4 years ago.
Right.
And there were 200 employees. It became a big law firm. Yeah. But I was not really happy doing what I did back then. For a series of things, but mainly because the situation in the country was not nice after the Olympic Games and the World Cup. We knew that the situation in Brazil would not be as nice as it used to be before in preparation to these games. And I also was not satisfied with my career as well. I didn't like to do what I was doing there. So yeah, but I spent 13 years of my life there only as a lawyer. That was my only job, my only my professional experience.
And then you took the step and moved right to Switzerland. Can you share a little bit about like how that happened, like why Switzerland, and of course when we do that, it's like what were the biggest challenges you faced, moving from Brazil into Switzerland? I mean, like different language, a lot of like different culture, cold weather, and and all this stuff. So like, what was your thought process there, and what was the biggest challenges you were facing?
Yeah, the first thing is it was not easy to take this decision. It's I finally moved to Switzerland in 2016. But I think 2 years before, 1 year and a half before, I was thinking about what I was going to do, because the only experience I had in my life was working as a lawyer there at the office. But I didn't want two things. I didn't want to work with the legal aspect anymore. Sure. And that was the only thing I knew how to do. So I went through this coaching process in Brazil. And then it helped me clarifying things. And but in order to change the career path, I knew I had to qualify myself first. So I started to look for some options. And finally, a friend of a friend opened me this opportunity of coming to Switzerland to do this master's here in Switzerland. And I graduated here at the AISTS in Lausanne. It was not easy to come, as you said, but for a series of things. Because first thing, I'm married. I have 3 kids now. Back then, I had 2 kids.
Right.
So it was not easy at all. None of us spoke French back then. And here, it's the French language here in the French part of Switzerland.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was challenging. It was really challenging.
Yeah.
And it was not guaranteed that I would have a job after graduating. So these were challenges that we had to face. And on top of this, I didn't have, and I still don't have the European citizenship from any European country. I still don't have, which is sometimes is a barrier. We can talk about it later.
Yeah.
Yeah. these were and the cultural shock as well, as you said, many different things. The language barrier is the first thing. That's definitely the first thing. Coming from Rio, where you have sun all year long, it's completely different. When you come to Switzerland, I'm not used to.
I know the feeling.
Yeah, it's completely different. It's completely different. And for the kids, the first time when you drop your kids at school, you say, how are they going to manage this? How are they going to speak simple things here? They don't speak French at all.
Right.
And people say to you that in 6 months they're going to be speaking fluently, and don't trust this, but it's true. In 6 months they were already speaking
Children
French.
learn so fast, though. It's amazing.
Yeah, much faster than us. And of course, there's this fear,
right,
of not succeeding and have to come back to where you come from. But things turned up to go right.
Right. And let's I want to hear a little bit from Ida too. And I mean, like, of course, the main story is about you, Raphael, but Ida has kind of like a similar story. I mean, like, he didn't move to Switzerland, but he moved to Norway. So I don't know, like, what was the biggest challenges for you, Ida, and like, how can you like, was it similar to what Raphael saw, or like how?
Well, compare with him moved with 2 kids, it was nothing. Like, nothing. But the of course was a huge impact. Like, arrived in Molde, like 1 a.m. was like was in August, was they lost my luggage, was kind of cold, and it was summer. I was a small city, like 25,000 inhabitants. I was like, what I'm doing here, right? So, but I remember next morning when I woke up and I saw the fjord, I said, yes, I think this would be nice. And so there's a lot of things happen at the same time. You start to get motivated about it, and then you see the language, you see your English is not that good as you think, and start to see, like, of course, the price. Norway is very expensive to be there, so there was a big challenge for me. I was in a different situation. I was nothing, but I want to change, right? So I had didn't have like a lot of money to support, so I had to be very smart with my resource to find a job and start to organize my life. But yeah, like the language, weather, of course. My first winter in Norway was kind of depressive. I'm not gonna lie.
It's very dark. It gets very dark and very short days during the winter.
And I think I got like was one of the winter that had more snow in the past years, like 2017. It was very, like, a lot of snow and dark and like nothing. I remember I spent like 2 weeks at home, like in a tiny room, like couldn't do anything. But I think it worked. If you have a plan and you trust the process, it gotta work. You just
and let's dive a little bit into your plans, Raphael. But I just wanted to like highlight like one fun fact. I've been to Lausanne like once, I think, or maybe twice, but at least once. And one of the things like that amazed me is like Lausanne reminds me a lot of Norway. It like just like the mountains. They have like the lake there, and like the way the city's built. I'm like, it reminds me a lot of Norway. So I felt like very like, oh, this is like I could be here. It seems like a very nice place.
It is.
And I'm of course glad to hear you enjoy the place, and which I assume is an important part of staying there, as Ida mentioned too. But obviously, things, it's a challenge. You moved to Switzerland. You're starting your program. Like doing a lot of stuff, coming with your family, gotta learn language, a lot of stuff. And like, what was kind of like your main objective, while being there, and what was kind of like your game plan to achieve it?
Yeah, to tell you the truth, to be very honest, I wanted the first thing I wanted was to work with football players. Okay, I wanted to make adaptation of Brazilian football players in Europe.
For sure.
Because I know it's difficult if for everybody, it's difficult for the adaptation, the change, as we are talking about here, about how it was for Edu and for me. Yeah. Because one thing is traveling abroad for a few days, you only see the good part of the thing, the bright part, the bright side. Yeah. But then you miss everything that you have in your country, your culture, and everything. So, and then I studied a lot about this before, and in my graduation, my thesis was about this adaptation of football players here in Europe, and I wanted to work with that. But yeah, and this is one thing, one tip. I would give to the ones that want to make a shift in their careers. They have to be a plan B.
Looking into the future, the beginner faces a choice that leads him to the triumph, or not. Being surrounded by like-minded professionals can be the best guarantee that you actually take that crucial career step.
Sport in Global is a digital network for sports jobs. It gives you the chance to be involved in the sports industry no matter who you are, regardless of gender, nationality, and experience.
Our AI system matches up talent with human resources. Candidates who align with the company's values and needs immediately get shortlisted. It saves time for HR and increases the opportunities available to applicants.
The platform identifies tailor-made recommendations based on user needs, so you're always aware of the possibilities out there right now.
Sport in Global is a place where students gain key tips about jobs and build the valuable connections that are essential for people at the beginning of their career path.
The path from candidate to champion starts with a single step in the right direction. Sign up to Sport in Global.
Sport in Global, the best way to enter the sports industry.
Right. Because the first thing, I was counting on having the Italian citizenship, because my wife, she has this right, and everything was going well, but we had a problem in the process, and we had to start it from scratch, from zero. And until today, we don't have the citizenship. So it's a strong barrier, as you know. Because here in Switzerland, it's first, it's the Swiss, and then the Europeans, and then the rest of the world. Right. Which is fair, but you just have to be ready for that.
Right.
And so my first option was, of course, working with football was the FIFA master.
Yeah.
But having 2 kids to take care of, it's not easy for you to move to 3 different cities, which is part of the program.
Right.
So, yeah, it was key to me, because I knew that here in Lausanne, I would stay here for the 16 months of the course. And it was a challenge for me, was key for me. But as I was telling you, the objective was to gain experience first, graduating at ASTS and gain experience, I don't know, in UEFA, FIFA or something like that. But as I said, you have to have the B plan ready for that, because I used to send my CVs, and to be very honest with you, I was never even called for junior positions, which scared me a lot. I said, well, if I can get an interview for a junior position, then it's the end. How can I get a job here?
And this
so
was
you have to be ready.
In sports law, right? Sort of like sports law position, like junior law.
Yeah, yeah. But even in more generic positions, in legal departments, they didn't require much, you know.
Right.
And I had much more experience than it was required. But I was never even, and I was not even called for an interview. And I was not to be very. I was convinced that I could go well during the interview and eventually be hired, but I was not even called.
But like, and we touched a little bit upon that though, right? Because like obviously, you know, you have a vast experience from Brazil, and you like as you kind of like now you're in this stage, you're realizing, okay, you sort of like have to begin from scratch, you know, and like, you know, okay, you apply for these positions and it doesn't really, you know, you don't crack the code yet. So like what steps did you take, and how did you cope with the situation to essentially make the most out of it, right? Because now, you know, you're ending, you're starting to get at the end of your program, you know, the I guess the emotions of like, I need to get a job, right? You have your family, all this stuff. How did you, like, what steps did you take, and how did you cope with the situation?
Well, there's one important thing that Eduardo mentioned that sometimes we do not realize. Sometimes you think when you travel abroad, where our native language is Portuguese, and then you say, yeah, I speak English. I speak fluently. Normally you check the box fluent or something like that. When you get here, you see that it's not really that. You see that it's a bit different. And to work with the level of English I had back then was not in a top position, would be impossible. So I have to tell you that I was kind of relieved to have to start in a lower position, which was that what happened after. And during the course, I was kind of changing my mindset and getting ready for that, you know, for restarting, because it's not just the English, it's the working culture as well.
Right.
I have never worked before for a company in my life. It's the law office was kind of something that started with between the two of us, my friend and I.
Right.
Then we didn't have this the corporate culture inside, which is
like
something
more of
that
a startup mindset, kind of, or like,
exactly that.
Yeah.
Yeah, something very with our personal touches and something like
right.
that.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and then I was kind of relieved not to have the burden of being the leader of something and starting from a very low position, which was intern. Couldn't be lower than that. Yeah,
pretty much.
Yeah, but why did I accept this position? Because the first thing, as I told you, my plan was to stay here in Switzerland, in Europe, but in the case was Switzerland. Because I had the two kids already adapted, and making another change would be
sense.
And this company where I work nowadays for the World Anti-Doping Agency.
Yeah.
And for WADA, the requirements is not the same as for other IFs here. They have a different status. So for foreigners to join WADA, it's a bit easier.
Yeah.
And so I didn't have to have the to be an European. So I started as an intern.
Yep.
And then I moved positions. Now I am a coordinator. I was a project coordinator before. So in 2 years I moved 2 positions. And,
nice.
Yeah. So
but I mean, like, it's also because you knew, like, you had expertise, right, and value also to bring, you know, wherever you were. Even if you had to start, you know, from scratch again, it was like, you know, you can provide value, and I think, like, that's definitely, like, one of the key things here.
Exactly, that's what I would say. I would, if somebody asked me, what is the key tip, I would say, be humble, be ready to learn. Because, as you said, if you apply your previous knowledge, your background, you can grow fast.
Yeah.
Just try to give time. You know, maybe it's not your dream position, but then you eventually get to that. Okay. I have to tell you that during this process now, very recently, I got 2 headhunters contacting me for different positions in other sports organizations. Nice. And I didn't even consider. I turned them down because I'm really satisfied where I am today, to tell you the truth. And it was not my plan.
You're a WADA, right? It's a big. I mean, like, still kind of small, but at the same time, like, it has great reputation, and it's like what you're working with is really important, you know.
Exactly, sports. It's a major player in sports in the world. It's in our area, it's the biggest. It's the reference in anti-doping. It's the reference. So yes, that was not my original plan. Yeah. But the culture inside the company is great, and the work I do today, I work with IFs and national anti-doping organizations as well. Right. So I have contact with sports in a daily basis.
Right.
And also there's some politics inside because you deal with countries. Yeah, and so it's nice. It's very dynamic, the work I do today, and I'm very, very happy to do what I do. And it was not my plan. It's completely different from what I planned.
Right, actually. Which I think is also like a key lesson here when we're going to talk a little bit about what tips you have. But before we jump into that, I thought it would be, you know, like you mentioned in the beginning, I want to work with, I mean, like you said, football players, but like if we would just talk like athletes, right? So in a sense, you kind of do though, you know, like obviously, like, if you think about it, like, WADA's core business, right, is obviously anti-doping and like making sure that, like, the players are following the guidelines and the rules. So at the end, you're sort of like are, you know, like working for that,
exactly,
you know, helping the athletes.
And it's even more important than that, Ole, because when I was during my coaching process, I was very worried to do something that could bring meaning to my life, because I'm very grateful for the banks, which gave me the opportunity to be here today, which paid my salary back then.
Yeah.
But it was not something that completed me, to tell you the
Right.
truth, of course. And
Right.
I wanted to do something nice, to work with something I liked, something meaningful. And I thought I could make difference in the athletes' careers if I could help them, accessorize them in a way here legally. I mean, on a daily basis, or with simple things that for expats sometimes it's impossible for some of them due
sure.
to language barriers or whatever. But and then I turned out to it turned up to that nowadays I work at WADA.
Right.
And I think it couldn't be, if I wanted to do something meaningful in my life, it couldn't be better than this,
sure.
because we're taking care of clean game, health of the athlete, and this kind of thing. So yeah, I'm very pleased to do what I do today. I feel that, and even in a lower position than I had back then, I feel that I'm more relevant today doing what I do than what I did back then.
And you're following your passion, like you're passionate about it. You enjoy your days, and you can make an impact, for like sports. And I think like that's a key thing for sure.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the key point. That's the key point. I think that I make the difference. I make a difference today doing what I do.
For sure. And
just one thing. I think also is important. We talked this last time we spoke about the kind of the one shot, right? The opportunity that you have in front of you. You kind of grab it and make it work. So when you have this, of course, we're in like different situation, but you kind of make the same move. And it's funny though, because when I was moving, I had a great friend of mine. He's a director in an investment fund in Brazil, and he was tired of that life, and he just quit everything to live like a student life in Germany and like do a master just because he wanted to get away of this crazy life, right?
Yeah.
Now, at the end, he went back to Brazil. He was invited to another investment fund, so went back. But he said it was the best time of my life, living as a student with less than €1,000 per month, like having fun, enjoying. Of course, the difference, but finding this meaningful and you understanding the opportunities. Like in Norway, we don't have much opportunities. It's like very grassroots.
Small
sports.
market, so it's
but at the same time, we talk a lot about this in the company, like what we can do, because it's a raw market. There's a lot to explore.
There's a lot of potential, it's just cracking a code essentially, and I think you do as well, and like going.
I always deny my company. He said, you have too much experience. You don't have to be here. Like you don't need no. I want give me. I need a internship to graduate it, and then you see what you go from there.
And I just wanted to complete something that came to my mind now. A full circle. Something that happened very, very interesting. While I was still a student at ASTS, there's a certain point where you start to apply for jobs. And normally here at the European office of WADA, it's the headquarters are in Canada, where you have more than 100 employees. But here we are only 10, and it's not easy to open a position here. But it opened during our master's open. There was this position open here for IF relations, and of course I applied.
Yeah.
And all the out of 35 students from my batch, I think 30 at least applied for this position.
Right.
And of course, all of us, we received this email, thank you, but the profile we're looking for, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But it turns out that today I'm doing pretty much what I intended to do back then. So that's why I say sometimes just be a bit humble, take one or two steps back, and eventually you get there. And then I knew that almost 700 people applied for that position back then.
Right, that's crazy. And I think what you're saying there is very key as well. So like obviously now when we're going more into like tips, right? And I want to bring out like sort of like my story from US too, where going from Norway, like I just graduated from undergrad and got a job offer here in Norway for a decent position, but I decided to go to the US, right? And I had like some experience here, like coaching, like working for like some major events here, and I knew as well, like coming there, I had to like get a feel of how the industry worked, because I knew it was also a different way of doing things, and starting from scratch. And as you say, being humble, but also, as Ida said too, take advantage of the opportunities that are given to you. And I remember like the first thing I did was volunteering, and I could probably like do like write like an internship or or like maybe like part-time job or whatever, right? I could probably do that. But I said, let me start with something, that gives me some insights and understanding of like how I can contribute and understanding the mechanisms. Because once you understand the mechanisms, it's a lot more easier to know how you're going to provide value. So I remember I volunteered like Oakland A's Fan Fest. It was like just a couple hours. It was a fun experience. Of course, it's like a major league baseball team, and it was a lot of fun. But it gave me, some contacts. It gave me like a way of starting the process. And from that one, I like did my internship unpaid for like almost like 8 months. Super, super awful when you're living in San Francisco and like don't get money in. But it is what it is, right? And then you prove your value, and then I got a paid internship. Then I got like more and more work, and suddenly like I was keeping myself busy every day with like new stuff. So I think like
it's exactly that.
Take a step back, as you say, and be humble. And if you have like like tips for someone like restarting their career as well, because I think also that's a little bit different, because I mean like of course I wouldn't say I was restarting it. I was just like moving to a new place. I was still very young. So like for those that are like more like gambling everything, like sort of like, okay, I'm just gonna like try something completely new, but I have like a lot of baggage from other stuff, then like what tips do you have for them, for restarting their career in a different country, and like how can you succeed essentially? I think like there are some key elements that needs to be cracked, before you understand that.
We have touched the humbleness. This, I think, for me it's key. But you should also, of course, know your value, where you're good at, what you're good at, and bet on that. Because but also very important is to know what you don't know. Because in my case, I had experience. I was considered very experienced in my my background, legal aspects, but in many other things I know nothing. So I had to learn everything about anti-doping, which is very, very, very technical. And then I realized that when I applied back then, while I was a student, I had no way I would be accepted, because my legal background was not enough for that. So knowing what you're not capable of is also something very important when you apply for a job, because it's the job you want. But it's not what the company wants, what you have, your skills. So the fit is very important. You have to see fit on that. And having a plan B is also very important. As I said, I was counting on having the citizenship. I should have had this 2 years ago, but until now I don't. And then now when I was again about to get it, and then the coronavirus situation came, and then everything in Italy was closed. So again, I'm still waiting for that. So you have to be ready for that. And as I think we have already covered this, we have said this before, as Eduardo was very, very, very happy in mentioning this, that you have to take the opportunities and look at that. Maybe it's not your dream job at first, but try to make the most of it. As you said, we in Brazil, we don't have this culture of volunteering. It's very strong in Europe, very strong. I have never volunteered before.
US too. I would say like sort of, in a sense. More like internships, I would say. Maybe not as much volunteering, but like internships for sure.
Because in Brazil, they hire a lot, like when we are at the university doing bachelor, they hire us to do like entry-level positions paying less. So
it's sort of like paid internships in a sense in Brazil.
But I mean, volunteering for anything, not just for sports, for anything. It's volunteering for the coronavirus task force or something like that. I mean, just volunteering, showing your goodwill to do things. It's experience, and you never know what expects you in the future. Like I was not expecting to work with anti-doping, so.
I don't know if either you expected to work for a sports tech startup and be a co-founder.
I had no plans in that. Like I knew that like I had the opportunity to live in England in 2010, and where I did a lot of mistakes, like I didn't know what I was doing, like learning the exchange currency and stuff. This was very challenging. So when I moved to Norway, I knew everything that I could not do, like I can't do those stuff, otherwise everything is not going the way that I want. So I had the list, these things I cannot do, the other things I have to try. Let's study, like try to the positions, try to learn the language, try to see the opportunities. And I saw very early that it was very hard to find something in Norway because of the language. And it was a very based in volunteering, grassroots sports. So I said, like, this would be challenging. And as I need to do the internship. So I did with Ole, and then things started to evolve. And I said, like, what's the first opportunity? And I said, like, let's do it.
Exactly that. But and another key point is as you mentioned, when you change cultures, it's can be shocking.
Right.
But Lausanne, I would say, Switzerland in general, but Lausanne especially, is a very international city. It's really, you have Geneva, 45 minutes from here, which is also an international destination for workers.
Zurich,
but here
is close.
Yeah, sorry.
Zurich is close. Zurich.
Yeah, exactly. Everything's close here in Switzerland, pretty much. But but I mean, and in Lausanne, especially, is the Olympic capital.
Right.
So you have people from all over the world. It's for us, it was not challenging at all in this sense.
Yeah. But I think, like, actually that's a really good advice, though. If we think about it, I mean, like, you maybe went a little bit full on and just like, okay, I'm going to go to Norway, like completely.
I just want to be a Viking and be a farmer.
but
try
I
to
think,
do
like,
other stuff for my life.
Talking about, like, how to restarting too is like, it might be an idea of like exploring, looking at countries that are more internationally, like sort of like where you kind of like I fit in, and like maybe just to make that transition a little bit easier. Of course, like go outside your scope and be comfortable being uncomfortable, but maybe like that's a good way to start, and as you said as well, for you couldn't just think about yourself either. You have to think about your family and kids and how to solve that element too. So I think if we're going to start to wrap up as we have just only a few minutes left here, I think like if there's a couple things I wanted to finish this with is that, first of all, as you said, be humble. Second of all, look for opportunities in countries that are more internationally, so it's easier for you to adapt in terms of like both language and maybe also culture. And third, it's know your value, but also know like where you can improve and how you can improve, so you can kind of like take that necessary steps in order for you to succeed. I don't know, either if you have like any final remarks, and then I'll let you, Raphael, end up too.
If you allow me just to, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. No, I would just say, like, have a plan. What do you want to do? Don't go. So say I want to go there and study, and that's it.
Yes.
No, you have to have a plan.
For sure.
And it's good that you mentioned this, because I would say have a plan and be ready to change your plans.
All right. Have a plan A, plan B, plan
exactly.
C.
Exactly. Have a plan. Of course, you have to have focus on what you want,
right,
but be ready to change it, or at least adapt it, because maybe it's needed.
I just knew that I don't want to go back to Brazil. I'll find a way to stay in Europe.
So you had to have a plan B. Definitely.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right. So Raphael, I would like to thank you for the time. We could talk about this for a long time. I think there's a lot of stuff to learn here, and I think our audience and viewers had appreciated this call. So with that, I would like to thank both of you for taking the time, and for all of you for listening. And we always finish with "Vi snakkes," which means "I see you later" in Norwegian.
Eu sei português. Até logo. Obrigado. Obrigado, Rafael.
Obrigado a vocês. Até logo. Foi um prazer participar.
All right.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.